Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome to my ranking of all 5 of the Scream movies. I will be ranking all 5 of those films. And for those of you who have not seen it yet, I've already reviewed every single one of them, including the new one. All 5, which I will have in the link down below. Today, let's talk about where I put these movies in my list. What are my favorite? What are my least favorites? The reason why it's taken me so long to get this out, because I know it's probably been like several days since I've done Scream 5's review, is because, as a lot of y'all know, I've got a lot of love for this series. So you can imagine that for someone like me, for a fanboy like me, that has such love for this series, such emotions, because this is the series that started the horror chain for me. That's why it's so near and dear to my heart. So you can imagine how hard it is to do a ranking like this when a lot of the movies go neck and neck, hand in hand. So it was kind of hard trying to determine which one was the weakest, which one was the best, when in my mind, all I can think of, all of them are the best, but I have to draw the line somewhere, which means I have picked out several faults with some of the movies, but still, it's kind of hard to do, given the circumstances. All are special to me, no, there's no denying it, but my number 5 has to go to Scream 3. Now, this one was the one that really got me into the movie theater experience in horror, watching horror movie, because this is the first one ever that I watched in theaters. First horror movie ever that I watched in theaters with my dad. And that's why at first I put this one on the highest tent ball that I could think of. Like, if you would have asked me that a few years ago about this one, I would have said, hey, Scream 3, number 1. But here recently, after reviewing it, after watching them and reviewing them, I do see its flaws. Yes, I do like the whole storyline with the Marie Prescott and delving more into that storyline that we heard some of in the background in Scream 1 and 2. I do like that whole plot line. Plus, there's some damn good characters in here, especially with Sidney. I mean, not all characters was. I probably didn't elaborate this in my reviews, but Sidney particularly, and Neve Campbell. I really did like her. But there's no denying that you can definitely tell that this was done by a different writer, because it just didn't have that smart wit about it. That meta movie reference, except for like that Randy scene where they played that tape in that trailer park. It just felt watered down, especially with the kills. And they were more like PG-13 kills, and I think the only reason why they rated this R is because some language and profanity. That's the only reason why I think this was pretty much R-rated. And so the blood and gore wasn't really even a factor at all in the rating. It was just so watered down. And they could have done a little bit better with that. It just felt misplaced. But aside from all that, it was still a good movie. It still had its moments. So I'm going to have to put Scream 3 as number 5. Number 4, I'm going to have to go with Scream 2. Now, this is one where they started the heavy on the meta references, especially with that whole movie within a movie thing, with that Stab movie being a part of the Scream franchise, which is basically this movie that they made that was based on the events of the first one. Now, they did go heavy and hard with the meta references in the first one, but with Scream 2, with the Stab movie, with this movie within a movie, I really did like that. Plus, again, with Sidney Prescott and Neve Campbell's character, she was awesome. Plus, there was some good jump scares, and the killer reveal was pretty cool. Plus, the meta movie reference scene in the classroom made it all the worthwhile. Just kept that smartness and wittiness alive about it. But the problem I have with this movie, which is why it's number 4, is the killer clumsiness really started to weigh in. It just felt like the killer was just drunk the whole entire time. He just couldn't keep his shit together, so it just felt like a puppet, pretty much. Plus that whole thing with the boyfriend giving Neve Campbell's character that necklace, his sorority frat brothers, saying that's a big no-no, we'll torture you and this and that. Just felt like it was kind of a pace killer for me, kind of sort of a mood killer. It just kind of slowed down the movie for me a little bit. Could have dealt without that. And the last three of these are really neck and neck. As if it wasn't hard enough ranking these things without trying to find some negativity in them. But I'm in the majority of the many people that love this series. These last three was just kind of real neck and neck. But number three, I'm going to have to go with Scream 5, the newest edition. Now, I like what the directors brought to the table. This is the first film not directed by Wes Craven since he passed away. And that was one of the things that I was really worried about going into this the first time. Now, of course, I watched it twice, so my opinions have kind of changed a little bit, but not really. A lot of things that was weighing against this movie, especially with me, with Wes Craven not being among us anymore, and knowing that this is his baby, and this is the reason why I got into the horror genre, the reason why I know who Wes Craven was. So whenever I found out who was directing Scream 5, the newest one, the same guys that did Ready or Not, which was another movie I liked from them, I was a little relieved. And it didn't really feel like that they were trying to outshine Wes Craven. It didn't feel like they were trying to be better or any less or any worse. It was their own vision. It felt like they done right by Wes Craven. They didn't disrespect. The lead characters was done pretty decent, especially with the legacy characters. I really liked what they did with them. Granted, they wasn't in it much, but with Dewey, he was one of the characters that most people didn't really like, and the others, I never really had a problem with him. But they really gave him a lot to do in this. He was really willing to help. So yeah, I liked the way the directors went with this. Their style. And, just the all-out direction that they went. There's just plenty of twists and turns of something different that they did. So I'm going on a little more with the positives in this one, because this one is actually definitely a little bit of a step up, but I wouldn't compare it to Wes Craven's masterpiece, because he'll always be a favorite of mine. He'll always be a favorite director of mine, especially with this series. But here goes a little short negatives about Scream 5 is the blood and gore. Now, that was one thing that was very overhyped about this. But after watching it a second time, yes, I do admit it was a little bit bloodier. But it wasn't as what I expected, because there was so much overhype on this. I mean, there was some brutal kills, but how much more can you kill somebody? There's no real creativity in killing somebody by just stabbing them. I mean, that's all Ghostface is. He just stabby, stab, stab. How much more can you kill a person like that? It's not like Jason or Freddy or Michael, and I pretty much stated this in the review. But there's just not that much creative ways to kill somebody by just stabbing them. So I do feel like the blood and gore and carnage candy was a little overhyped. But, however, I do feel a little bit of a difference in watching it a second time. And I do admit it was kind of brutal. But that, tadpole still belongs to Scream 4. Which brings me down to my final two rankings. And number 2 is going to be Scream 4. Now, this is one where I really don't get the hate for it. I hear people say that that this was their least in the series, the least favorite in the series. But I really do think it was a step up from 3, at least. And as I said before, I really do believe that this one is the bloodiest, is the goriest, especially with the Olivia death scene. But I really did feel like Scream 4 did put it back on track, especially after 3. With Kevin Williamson coming back. And even with Scream 5, they did it right. I didn't mention this, but they did it right with all the meta references and the requel plot line, since that's the state of horror in nowadays. But get back to Scream 4, it did feel like it was back to basics. And I just thought it brought a really good comeback for the series. Now, the only problem I have with Scream 4, and I think this was intended, the lighting in this was a little bit too glowy. It was way too shiny for a Scream movie. And I think Wes Craven intended to be like that because he wanted it to make it look more modern, but it just didn't really work for me. You know, with the cop car lights going down the streets, it was just so disoriented. And even with the hospital sign, the lettering on the hospital, it like you couldn't really read it because the glow was so bright that it kind of made the letters disoriented, and you couldn't really see that much. So that's the only problem I had with Scream 4. But other than that, it was a good movie. It was a damn good movie. So Scream 4 is at number 2. And of course, by default, at number 1, Scream, the original Scream in 1996. Now, this is a movie that I had no problem with. This is a movie that got me into the horror genre. This is a movie that I owe everything to. A long journey of horror movies that followed Scream is because of Scream. And I loved the way that they presented the original Scream. When you're growing up, when you watch a horror movie for the first time, it's going to stick with you. You never forget your first love. And that's what I always say. So I love the way they did Scream with the meta references. Like I said before, they really drove it home with all the smart and the wittiness about it. And plus this killer killing in the name of horror movies and calling you up, asking you what's your favorite scary movie before he slices and dices. It really made me appreciate the slasher genre. You know, by this point when Scream was made, Scream was the one that really saved the horror genre at that time. People was kind of getting tired of horror by that time. But when Scream came out, it was on. You know, all bets were off pretty much for the horror genre and all. So Scream was a damn good movie, and it's at number 1 at my ranking. So that's it for my ranking of the Scream films. Question is for you guys. What are your thoughts? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Write me down below and give me your thoughts. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I will see you on more. Peace.